Welcome to Pixels and Politics, where today we're exploring the nuanced and vital topic of transgenderism. I'm Blackheart alongside my co host Dougie, and we're thrilled to have a longtime friend and a courageous voice in the conversation, Rose, a trans woman who's here to share her journey and perspectives. Together, we'll dissect the complexities of gender spectrum, the distinctions between gender and sex, the significance of labels in our society, and we'll delve into the personal and societal aspects of transitioning, from hormone therapy to surgeries to the social dynamics of dating in public spaces. Our discussion will span a range of critical topics, including the role of language, the implications of policy on personal freedom, and the intersection of mental health and self identity. Join us for a deeply personal and enlightening dialogue that aims to broaden understanding and foster empathy on the subject of transgenderism. Rose, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
I'm doing great. Happy to have you on here. Happy to have you a part of this discussion. I'll be definitely curious to hear a lot of your opinions on the topics, mostly because I just tire of hearing Dougie's all the time.
Dude, what the hell? Um, what's fun is I actually think we range across the spectrum very nicely, so I'm looking forward to this a lot. Um,
Yeah. Should we maybe start with having Rose, I guess, explain, I guess, how they know you and kind of how they fit into the conversation?
like
um,
know me personally, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like
Oh yeah,
tell a
sure.
little bit of tell us a little bit about you, Rose. How do you know Dougie? Tell us a bit about yourself and kind of help the listener understand, I guess, about you.
yeah, I'm kind of just I met Dougie through this team that we played on. I think it was named Omega. I could be wrong about that. And we're kind of just going through roster changes at the time, and eventually Dougie came
By
in.
by team you mean League of Legends, right?
Yeah, League of Legends team. Yeah, I should have
Yeah.
specified that, but yeah, we were playing on a League of Legends team, and eventually Dougie got swapped in our roster, and that's kind of just how we met. We went through a couple matches and practiced a lot, then came around like this time for the tournament, and that's kind of just how we got to know each other. Um, we were just teammates, pretty much.
Gotcha. Been friends ever since.
Yeah, we've played some arena and league. We've played some Phasmophobia. Had conversations here and there.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the League video game Dougie space. Kind of what's your life journey been like?
Um, I'm mostly just a college student. I've tried working a little bit here and there during my semesters with like work study, if you're familiar with that. Just a little bit of money I can scrape on campus
I am
to help with.
familiar. Yep.
Okay.
What school do
Um,
you go to, and what are you studying?
I go to Miami-Dade College as of right now, and I'm currently just doing my general ed. I think I'm listed as a psychology major, but I do have plans to switch that over to marine science.
Nice,
Okay. I
nice.
mean, it's a good place to study marine science, from what I've heard.
Uh, I think so, yeah. I might switch to FIU for my bachelor's, but we'll have to see. That is in the near future. We'll figure that out.
Cross the bridge when we get to it. Fair enough. Fair enough. Dougie, where do you want to start the conversation
So
today?
I would love to start um where I kind of started. I think it was at the start of this month or last month. I was watching a podcast and they were arguing about um gender. They were arguing about gender, and the one of the people speaking did such a good job at explaining it to me. I kind of like I had an epiphany. I was like, oh, I finally understand what everyone is on about because I didn't get it. I really didn't. Um, but essentially, what I've learned has been happening is that the breakdown of gender and expanding of it across the spectrum has kind of correlated with the breakdown of gender roles and the introduction of women into, the working class. Um, so normally gender and sex have kind of been linked, not like officially, but they've been linked. And between that link is gender roles. And with gender roles changing so much and people filling out roles across the spectrum, so has gender. And that made so much sense to me. It just clicked in my brain. I was like, okay, I kind of get it. Now, I would like to say this. I think I'm in a minority here. I think that if it's a social construct and if it's not important, we should just not use it. Like I'm so for people expressing themselves. I've never understood, and it's the same thing with sexuality. I noticed too. Like a couple years ago, much longer, but they had like this huge thing in sexuality where it was like, okay, we're all choosing to be different things or identifying as different things, and it's just it's kind of coming off as the same thing here where I'm drowning, guys. I'm drowning.
Yeah,
Where I
you
didn't
are
understand. I didn't understand why everyone felt the need to label themselves outside anything that was necessary, right? That's kind of where I got lost. I understand the general opinion of, okay, there's all these different people, they don't fit these gender roles. Let's add new words, basically, or I guess these words are existing. I don't know. I understand the self identification and the expansion of these labels. But personally, I don't like labels. I think they're silly outside what you need, Like when you go to a doctor, of course it makes sense, but outside of that, I never understood why everyone's like I'm demisexual and you know it just there's that broad freaking long line of dialogue. Um Anyways, that's where it started. And I had wanted to have this conversation for quite a while and kind of just learn more. And I'm hoping this opportunity, this is the opportunity too. And hopefully other people can learn stuff too. Because I've talked to a lot of people about it, and it seems like everyone has these wide, varying opinions from the topics on trans to gender roles to just sex in general. Like, it is so crazy how different everyone's opinions on it are. But I mean, it's wild. Anyways, that's where it started. And so here we are.
I could have something I could input on that.
Sure.
Um, Ultimately, I feel like the gender roles. Okay, I'm gonna preface this by just saying it would be an ideal universe if you didn't have to label yourself as XYZ and just you could just be who you are, right?
Yeah.
And it would just flow. It would make sense. It wouldn't get questioned. That's kind of just an ideal universe. You could just do what you want. It doesn't get questioned. That is just your way of life. That is how you live it. That would be ideal. No one would have to complicate or trip themselves over anything. But let's start off with sexuality, right? Let's
Sure.
start off with sexuality. Ultimately, I feel like it comes from a lack of education. The whole reason having to narrow down. Actually, I would honestly go ahead and just say that sexuality is really good for just relaying to other people what your dating pool is or just what it is you're looking for in other people. Ultimately, adults are going to mingle. Everyone, not even adults, even some teenagers, everyone at some point is going to look for a partner. Some fewer audience don't look at all, right? And being able to use a word to label what it is you're into and what it is you're not um, helps figure things out and helps other people as like a guideline. Okay, well, this person is not available, but that is like in a social setting, I guess, and it's just like a one word label. I guess we're just gonna use a one word thing that you can use to just let someone know that's not your thing, or maybe you can match, whatever it may be. But not everyone is the same, and I think that's what kind of just makes it more like a guideline, I guess. Like everyone can kind of follow the system, but it's not perfect. It's like it's definitely flawed. Like some people can feel they're a certain way, but they don't know it just yet, that maybe they're more than that or less than that or something else, right? Like you may think you're bisexual, but maybe over time your attraction to a certain gender may not be so. Or at least not as powerful as the other. And then also bisexuality is kind of in a spectrum too. Maybe you're more leaning towards a certain type of gender more than the other. That exists too. There's people who are more attracted to men than women, more women than men, sometimes equal. Kind of just depends. But I think it just ultimately functions as a guideline in society, right? And then
I think that's definitely one way to look at it. I think there are, not that this is right or wrong, but I think there are people who have the perception that some people choose a label for themselves that is different in order to arbitrarily be unique. Have you guys at least heard that sort of criticism before?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What would you think about that? Do you think that's like a legitimate criticism, or do you think that's just um like that's way overplayed, or what? I'm curious.
So my understanding of it is that topic came to light solely through, I guess, the explosion of social media. I guess like this is another thing. Social media has warped gender roles and just labels as a whole. Like just being able to represent, right? Like representing is a very big thing right now.
Can I
Right?
rant about social media really fast? Just really
Go
quick.
ahead. Yeah.
You
Social
can't. You're not
media.
allowed.
I hate social media specifically for this topic because it paints people so far left and right that it's beyond ridiculous. I've met so many people who are on the right who could not be bothered when it comes to trans stuff, and I've met people so far on the left who are completely logical about it. Like it's just not even social media is so awful. It's made the topic so touchy that I think it's been really harmful for everybody involved. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, continue.
No, I mean you're absolutely right there. Like it definitely becomes a rough topic because by just simply discussing it and just revealing maybe which side, I hate to say that there's even sides, but like to say like where you stand in all this gray area, I guess. I don't know what to really call it, but where you stand in all of this, where your opinion is, where your thoughts
Spectrum.
lie. Yeah, the spectrum, sure.
I feel
It's
like that's
just
kind of topical.
it's like where your thoughts lie and opinions lie in all of this, regardless what you may think, you will create enemies and you'll get negativity for it, and there's going to be like discussing it will in most cases like garner some form of negativity, right? And like it doesn't really matter. Like you could appeal to like, I mean, I was about to say you could appeal to like the loud majority, but like even then it kind of just depends on where the environment is talking, because like I guess like the algorithm can land you in certain different places. Like you could land into like your post could reach out to people that are supportive of trans people, but your post could also land and reach out towards people who are not supportive of them, right? And that's kind of just where the minority and majority kind of lies, I would say. Because like I think trans supporters can be the loud majority in a case, even though the minority, I would like to say, but like depending on who the consumers of the content are, I would say dictate that. But regardless, um, I would say you're absolutely right. Like it does make it pretty toxic, especially since something that, let's say, Twitter, right, is really good for. I wouldn't say it's really good, but that is very popular or like really commonly used for like topics like this. Um, there usually isn't much discussion room. Like a debate, like would have like back and forth, and it would like try to draw the line about where everything is, right? Just paint the picture for everyone and educate everyone. Yet it kind of feels like if you just have a certain view, you do get like pummeled out. Like you get a bunch of negative labels placed onto you, And you're not even coming from a bad place either. I've seen that happen to people all the time. They're just simply trying to learn about trans people. And I see people attack them all the time on Twitter. And it's like they don't actually come from a negative place. Like if you actually read the context, like the person clearly had no malintent. But yeah, like social media is definitely toxic, and I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I kind of sidetracked there.
Yeah, the conversation can be a little tense in person too. I would like obviously any online conversation is gonna have more vitriol in it, whether it's because you have like bots trying to pull you one way or the other, or you just have people who have like this. I don't even want to say it's like a shield, but it's like a somewhat anonymous or somewhat distant, you know, place to cast stones from. But I've seen conversations about the topic in person get pretty tense too, even among people who like more or less agree on like let's say 70% of the conversation. Like the 30% they don't agree about can like really like it can really kind of shake uh like a group or like a whoever's talking about it. Um it happened quite a bit. Like I'd say like so I went to college at AU, American University. It's up in DC. It's like a super liberal school.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like one of the first. I think they like to pride themselves on being like the first, like one of the first schools, or maybe it was the first school to like offer unique pronouns on your applications. It wasn't just he, him, or she, her. Like you could do whatever you wanted, and so there was a lot of topics about this on campus, and it was like even even people that agreed on most of it would get like very angry with each other. I saw it like ruin some friendships, ruin some sort of academic relationships too. It was like very. I always thought it was kind of bizarre. I usually avoided the topic just because I could see it would, you know, kind of drive people. And I think I was kind of thinking about this as we led up to this podcast today. I was kind of like, I wonder. I was thinking, trying to think why it's such a passionate topic, and I think it's because uh, for anyone who like has to consider anyone has like their own perception of things, and like people's perceptions and experiences can really entrench their belief on something. And for some topics people have no experience with it, right? So like they can kind of approach it with a blank slate. But I think with the topic like transgenderism or sexual orientation or gender identity or any of the subtopics you want to throw in there, it's like we all have an experience of like what we're attracted to and like what we feel is normal for like our own bodies. And like if someone has like a different opinion on that, or it goes way against the grain, like the immediate kind of reaction is to kind of go like, whoa, like that's different. And usually when things are different, that creates like some type of like conflict,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, honestly, you bring up a really good point where we're talking about something that is so fundamental to every human being on the planet, right? Like everyone's gonna have a preference. Everyone's going to feel like they identify with one sex or the other, you know. Um, so I guess yeah, like you bring up a good point that it's so ingrained in us. Like it's such a foundation to our very being. You know, it's like food. It's like one dude over there is like eating dirt and you're eating pizza. It's so like you would look at that person so differently. You know what I mean? Or like if they're just eating grass. Like it's like how people view vegans sometimes. You know. I there it is a topic that I think um, it kind of involves everybody, even if it doesn't directly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, well, I think it's just a topic that like, whether it's a good conversation to have or not, or productive or not, like you can try to be as productive with it as possible. But like I think it's kind of got to be understood that there's going to be a lot of resistance to it, just because it goes so against what has been established and what the kind of like the social norms have been for so long.
mhm.
And that's the same with like any social movement, right? There's always going to be resistance to it, right? Like there used to be resistance to like abolishing slavery, or like ending segregation, or
Yeah.
letting women enter the workforce or vote, or any of that stuff. But I
Gay
think with
marriage.
gay marriage, or just accepting gay sexual preferences in general, that took some some time and effort.
Mm.
And I think though that this topic is going to, I think it's just because it encompasses so many different aspects that kind of lead into other things. I think it'll be a topic that's going to have probably more resistance than some of the other things.
It is what it is. Let him. Let it.
I would like to say you brought up a really good point when discussing how it could be against the grain, right? Like it could be very foreign to some people.
Hmm.
It's just it's a topic that not many people are educated in, but also at the same time, I wouldn't even know. Like, there's probably so much more that I don't know just yet. So it's like hard to say what's really educated and what's not. But what I can say is, even as we were just saying, that there's going to be resistance to any kind of, I'm just going to say evolution, because like society is constantly evolving with how this is progressing, like how this further integrates and changes how day-to-day life just functions, whether it's like new bills being passed or just people accepting or not accepting certain things. Like the impact that has been done through like homophobic beliefs, right? Like through religion or whatever beliefs that maybe, I don't know what's the right proper word to use for it. So sorry if I'm using the incorrect
No,
word, but like a very
no, no, no,
conservative
no,
view.
no. Keep going, keep going.
So like a very conservative view on this development is like, it can, I feel bad for some people because it can like actively make them, I don't want to say have like an existential crisis, but it like compromises their being in a way. Like they're very comfortable being themselves and they haven't had to think about being gay because it's always just been like innately something that is like, you don't even have to be gay. It's just like the concept, the potential that you're just like these other people that you're probably not cool with. It's like you've never had to consider it because maybe the people around you, your normal life was nothing to do with these societal rules, right? Like their rules were just different, and them adapting to this can make it feel like maybe their life has been compromised. Maybe they've been wrong all along, or maybe
Well, I think we can maybe like lean into this topic a little bit, but just because I like playing devil's advocate and bringing up the alternative side's opinions, um, one of the common criticisms of the transgender movement is that transgenderism as a whole can be or should be or whatever classified as a mental illness, that it's not a real thing, and that it's just either people like seeking attention or them not understanding themselves or having something fundamentally wrong. um I'm obviously, I think we've all heard that criticism as well. I'd be curious to know kind of what your, I guess, answer to that would be, Rose, and if you feel like it's an answer that like can kind of apply like wide over the whole argument, or if maybe you agree that like maybe in some cases it is like a attention seeking thing.
so. I discussed a topic related to that today in my law class, and it is a very big gray area. But there are studies proving that it is a part of your being. It's just something you're born with. In the same way that being gay or being bisexual or being really whatever is just a part of your being, a part of you being born, being who you are, that is just you. Like you are that way for a reason. Now, we did bring up earlier at the beginning of this entire conversation and this is kind of like what we derailed from when we started talking about social media, but whether it's attention seeking or not. And I think that stigma has come from social media solely because there are doubts. There are people who maybe haven't been perceived to have like the behavioral patterns of someone who's part of that community or part of that spectrum, and then just come out. And it's just like sometimes, people come from different backgrounds and maybe they need the courage to come out with it. And in some cases, it could tragically just be something like, for example, corporations like get so much flack for this all the time. Pride Month comes around, they change their logos to a pride flag. The exact second it's over, they remove that shit. And it's like part of it is, representation, standing alongside the gay community, but at the same time, it can be seen as predatory, right? Just trying to sell merchandise and capitalize off of an event, trying to celebrate people. There's many ways to look at it, and I wouldn't say for the most part. I wouldn't say for like 85% of cases that it's attention seeking. I can totally understand that there's maybe some people who are attention seeking, and I think this solely just comes to social media's ecosystem, where like there are people who want like, to them it's important to garner followers, likes, clicks, views, whatnot, whatever social media platform you use, that whatever system that it uses, right? um to gain traction, right? And sometimes just going with a trending topic, which most social medias I feel like have a trending tab, so you could see what's trending, and you could just make statements that are just leaning towards the popular majority, and you'll have people supporting that. And it's like in those senses I can see it being attention seeking. um there have been some cases where people get like power trips trying to like force others to like use their pronouns, and this is going to be a little sticky terrain here because how do I put this? As a trans individual, if I'm interacting with someone, right, whether it's Dougie, whether it's like a random person on the street, right, and I'm making conversation with them, I don't have to expect them to actually um, abide by my pronouns, right? If I inform them of my pronouns, maybe they didn't immediately understand that I was a feminine person, but I think I'm a pretty, like, I think I'm a passing woman, like, most of the time, unless I go out and I like deliberately didn't prepare myself for that day. Like, for example, I didn't shave my facial hair. I didn't like, I guess, feminize, I guess for the lack of a better word, myself. Like, if it was like blatantly obvious, maybe I was biologically male, and someone brought me up as like a he or a him, right? It's like I wouldn't hold that against them. That is a pretty, like, I feel like that's a pretty fair judgment to make. And it's also like just assuming someone's pronoun is also another like gray area where it's like,
I have a question for you.
okay.
Because again, with social media, I don't have a lot of experience in this this area, but what you see is normally people get on social media, they get offended by that, and then they like make this huge deal. So from your personal knowledge and experience, what would you say like the percentages for people who are like, you misgendered me, I'm gonna lose my mind, to, hey, some people are dickheads, or they just believe in something different, it's not a big deal. What would you say the percentage is there for you, for people that or the experiences you've had?
Um, that's kind of a vague question because like percentages in what? Like number
Well,
of people that actually like ignore pronouns?
do you think, no, I'm asking from the trans side. How many of the trans people would you say, is it normal? Is your reaction normal, or is the other reaction normal, where they, it like genuinely makes them very upset, and there's a huge reaction?
I'm gonna keep it a
versus
$1.50.
okay.
Um, when we're discussing social media, we already brought up like that it can be attention-seeking behavior to like
Mm,
put up whatever like sexuality you identify as or whatever pronouns you go by, XYZ thing. And it could potentially even also be um, a power trip. Like I was discussing earlier, like a power trip. Like some people genuinely like lose their shit over other people not conforming to their pronoun usages, whether it's accidental or intentional. And they will like make the pacing of an interaction or a conversation awkward for you just not like conforming to that like what is the word commodity. I don't even know what to go like refer to that like that preference, right? And I would say if you are an LGBT individual, right? Hell, this even applies to straight people too, right? This applies to straight people too, but like regardless, or even cis people. This applies to everyone, but obviously LGBT members that go by different pronouns than the biological birth are like more prone to running into this issue. But regardless, it's like if you're on social media, and a very common thing on social media is putting your pronouns on your bio, or Discord now has your pronouns like as something you could label, right? Like it is very obvious information whenever someone's interacting with you that they could like it's like on demand intel, right? Like what this person goes by. Now, if through your IGN or your profile pic or through your mannerisms, XYZ reason, they try to deduce what you go by, or whether they don't even care, they didn't even put effort, they just assumed, right? And they get it wrong, and you get angry and you act up on that, or people attack that individual, it's like it's pointless, right? I feel it's pointless. You're not getting anything done by attacking the individual. And if they did it on purpose, they're literally just some asshat. I'm sorry, it's social media. One of the biggest fucking like. I know we just finished discussing that like there's like no room for debate. You just kind of shut out unpopular opinions when it comes to social media. People with like a differing opinion that isn't the majority will probably get like fucking like swarmed, right? With negativity. But like ultimately, if someone's like intentionally using the wrong pronoun, right? And it bothers you like deep down, you block it right there. Like you mute the person, you block the person, whatever method you have on whatever platform it is, just cut off interaction with that individual. It is literally not worth the energy, it gets nowhere. And it's like the main strength to social media, I would say. I mean, that's hard to say because social media is really good at representation. It's really good at reaching out to people. But like, I'm sorry, like if someone's bothering you, that person really shouldn't be bothering you, and it should just like cut it off right there. But people love making like a big deal out of things, or some people just don't think rationally sometimes in the moment. And I would say like to answer your question about which side is normal, I would say this sounds kind of arrogant, maybe to some degree even ignorant, but like I'd say my side is normal because I feel like you really shouldn't be perturbed by someone incorrectly like addressing you, whether on purpose or not. Like if they did it accidentally and this is like someone that's friendly to you or even an acquaintance, you could be like, hey, look, I go by XYZ. Um, just in
There's
case
a
you didn't
there's a
know.
there's a difference between a insult of ignorance as opposed to an insult of intentionally being an ass.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
No,
And context just matters a lot. And regardless of which one it is, I like it would probably irk me a little bit if like I've had so many cases in league, like in tournaments or even like interactions with people in ranked, right? Because high elo is like a small
The generous
community.
community.
Yeah, it's a very, very isolated small community. Everyone knows each other. I've had many people just intentionally like refer to me as like a man. So like there's even this like stigma where they say like trans people are fucking child predators and shit like that. It's just weird. You're just like a weirdo for saying that. Like frankly, you are just fucking weird and like you don't deserve my attention. I don't need to acknowledge this individual. We're on the internet. I will constantly state that the primary strength is you can literally just block anyone that bothers you. And it's kind of funny because my lists of blocked people are long as shit. And it's like I feel like that's not used enough. If it's like, why would you even let that person channel anything into you? Like, they're probably gonna be like typing into an abyss after you block them too. Like, they're probably still like typing into chats, trying to bother you, and you can't even see it because it's blocked. Like, that person is a weirdo, and you just leave it at that. Now, there's some nuance. You could say that they're like uneducated or whatnot, but it's like, frankly, this person's doing it out of malicious intent and the connection right there, it's useless. You whatever you say is not going to reach out to the person. Their goal has already been set to bother you. I never understand the like I don't know the word. I don't want to say obsession because I don't think it's an obsession.
In a game like League, it can always just be like an effort to try to throw you off your game, right? Like try to win like the mental battle, or they could just be like just trying like I've seen a lot of people, definitely not me ever having done this, of course, where like the game is lost and you just decide to make the experience as unenjoyable for everyone else as possible. So you just like either start like throwing the game actually, or just like try to make fun of the other team, or whatever you can.
Mhm.
I think that's probably just a part of it, but it's good that you use the. I think one of the best features League ever added was the fact that you could just mute the chat from the get go. You used to have to type /mute all every game
And
or
now
do
they
it
made it
manually. And now they
really
made it automatic.
convenient. Just click
Best change
tab
they
and
ever made.
yeah.
Now, if only they'd
But,
remove you and me.
but yeah, I think ultimately I would argue like my view on it is the normal view. I feel like someone with like a developed view on things that are just not like completely biased by social media. Like I feel like social media really makes you think a certain way. I think
Yeah,
it
that's
does.
why I brought it up because I think I'm glad that you answered the way you did, and I think you're correct that I imagine most people are pretty normal, and it's just like, this person's being a dick, or they just don't know. It's it is what it is. But social media has this. Yeah, I mean, it's going to show you what's the most entertaining, and you constantly see the videos of,
Sensational.
yeah, sensational, and you just get those videos, and I think that tends to warp people's brains, like you were saying, into thinking that like, oh God, this is what all trans people are like, like, I'm not gonna approach them. I don't want to use the wrong pronoun. They're gonna yell at me. They're gonna make a big deal. Like it's gonna be crazy. And again, I think social media is so harmful here because it tends to isolate the communities, and then even in those communities, it isolates them, like from each other. Like it just gets so crazy. So no, your answer was good, and I totally think that's true. I imagine most of the time it's normal. You know, it's
Yeah.
just hey, kudos.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I have another point I'd like to bring up kind of along the tangent that started this most recent sort of answer, kind of circling back a little bit to the criticism or the perception that like transgenderism is associated with mental illness.
Oh
So
yes.
I'm sure that maybe you're both, or I'll at least ask, are you both aware of like the suicide angle, right? Or like the suicide statistics
yeah,
Um
concerning transgenderism versus like general population?
yeah. It's not
no.
good. It's very
All
bad.
right. Yeah. So I'll list it. So this study is from, let's see, UCLA Williams Institute School of Law, where it's the study found that more than 40% of transgender adults in the U.S. have attempted suicide, and 81% have thought about suicide. And then from like the general population, so 81% have thought about it, 42% have attempted it, versus the general population where thinking about suicide was declared in 5.2% of adults and attempts were under 0.6%. So like very drastic difference, right? Like that's, I mean, I can maybe do some quick math or pull up a calculator, but that's like that's way and it's way out of whack, right? Like obviously small sample size. There's a lot going on nuanced in the community. I think maybe facing some challenges that the general population doesn't change, but what do you think? What do you both think? Uh, I guess that can be attributed to.
May I start? Because I'd like to kind of do some root stuff in
Yeah,
terms
sure.
of this. So, as when I was looking this up and doing research, it seems that people have kind of identified three causes to people being trans. One of them being genetics, and also having to do with an early exposure to estrogen, I think, in the womb. Um, Another one was this was kind of thrown out, but there was a dude who had a theory that some people it's a fetish. Um, and the last one was environmental. I think what's going on is that there's disagreement across the spectrum on what percentage of these groups make up the trans community. Like how many is it just biological? How many is it just trending? How many is it, is it a fetish? Um, so I think that's important because I think that's where the argument's really coming in. This is also new science. These studies are all new because God forbid our government actually cares about our mental health and didn't wait until just 30 years ago. But I think this is important because it is those numbers that people seem to be in disagreement about on the percentage of what's going on there. But there is some evidence very clearly that there's a biological factor. Um, Also, on there was a country, a Nordic country that did a study on all their people in terms of the trans suicide rate, and yeah, it pretty much supported what you said, Ryan. That whole
It
thing,
was Danish. It was
Danish, yeah.
Danish. So yeah, so it wasn't quite that exaggerated, but I think they said it was like uh their transgender community was, I think, 3.5 or 2.5 times more likely to attempt and or think
Hmm.
about suicide. And it's so this particular discussion is not necessarily interesting, but I find it somewhat unique in that I think both sides of the transgender debate kind of point at the statistic, but try to make different points about it. Or like, people that are on one side are like, this is indicative of an underlying mental issue,
Hmm.
right? That's why. And then the other side is, saying this is because we are facing problems and being, uh, criticized and unduly targeted and all this other stuff. And then you have people in the middle who don't believe either of those things, but are still trying to suss through why. But I think there's at least a growing pool of evidence that indicates that at least, and it's not like they're the only community that faces higher suicide ideation and attempts than others, right? Like military men face higher than your average, male in society too, and their causes, still being studied, not fully understood,
Yeah,
Hmm.
shout out for mental
along
health.
with other minorities and other things. Like there's not like a single cause of suicidal ideation, right? Sometimes it's like life experiences. Some people argue that there's like some genetics or mental things that kind of go into it.
Hmm.
It's it's a complicated issue as most things involving like anything inside our bodies is.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
but
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, you go. You go. You go.
I was just gonna say within the first two categories of it being biological and then it being environmental. I mean, the causes of the thoughts could be either innate or they could be because of societal pressures that are there, even just outside the normal, people who are not normal people, but people who normally experience those thoughts or uh, take those actions just because of normal society pressures. You didn't have the bonus. So I mean, how do you know, right? Like, how do you know? They just have to do more research. They just have to get better at this. They have to better understand our minds and how that works and all the different nuances and pressures that are going on. And there just needs to be more resources, you know, accessible to everybody because very clearly there's a problem within lots of communities, especially here in the trans community. Um, so I don't know. That's my opinion. They just need to do better. Like,
I have so much to say, so
sure.
if you guys have anything to say, go ahead, because
Oh, no, go for it. No, I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
so I'm gonna tie both these two things that we just covered together.
I
So
love to hear that. Hell yeah.
so first topic was whether being transgender is viewed as a mental illness or whether it's a biological thing. And then two, between the topics that you listed, Dougie, whether it's just innately part of being trans, like biologically, your suicide rate just is higher for being trans. And then I didn't remember what the second one was, but the third one was you're bringing up environmental issues. Now, you brought up specifically that it's hard to say that because there's not enough data and that people are kind of like trying to figure out, like they're like very divided on what percentage of these things, like how much of it is what, like amongst the trans community, right? Like how much of it is environmental, how much of it is mental, how much, I don't remember what the second category was, but I very much honed in. Okay, I definitely cannot say much on that, but
That one
I
is
can
that one probably has the least amount of research. I can't even remember the guy's name, but he like brought it. He introduced it, and it was something that was immediately shot down. I think there's probably some evidence for it, but it's not worth exploring when we don't have any. There's just not enough information, you know, in general for all three of them, let alone that one. But yeah, go ahead.
So 1 and 3 are not mutually exclusive. Both can be right. Like, so whether being transgender is a mental illness, that is a gray area. We don't know. But I do remember today my law teacher was discussing where transgender people lie amongst the 14th Amendment. And there are studies indicating that it is very much a biological thing. It is not a mental illness. But I don't think just because it's a biological thing doesn't mean it can't also be a mental illness. And I don't think being transgender itself is a mental illness. There are things that come with being transgender that can be mental illnesses. And one of those things I would say is body dysmorphia. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but amongst the trans community, like this is another thing where social media I feel like has also warped, where like there is, and this affects women, cis women, and trans women. This affects all women, period. And hell, it even impacts men and gay men. Like this impacts people, period. When it comes to social media and when it comes to porn, like there are idealistic views of what someone should look like. There are idealistic views of what someone's private parts and body parts should appear like, what narrative these things like entail, like what this experience should look like. And I feel like you create, I'm not saying you the individuals, but I mean like the mass of people consume this content. And I know when it comes to transgender people, their suicide rates are a lot higher. But when you combine a whole bunch of factors, like you're consuming this content and you're expected to look a certain way to be passing. And not only do you need to be passing, but you do need to be a bit exceptional to attract a guy. And usually, like I would say, some transgender people even like I've seen a lot of trans people like look for some 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10s, and it's like it's okay to have your bar high, but when you haven't dated, like trans people date very late into their lives. I would say like I would say like most average people, like cis men and women, would probably date in their teenage years, right? Like I would say even some as early as like 6th grade, you'd see people like attempting to date. Obviously, it isn't like an ideal, like it isn't like anywhere near what a relationship is like. But I mean, you have people experiencing in this world these like
Yep, no, you're right.
relationships, and now I don't want to say it's competition, but like when you're consuming this content, when you're seeing these models, when you're seeing people on social media, filters, surgery, plastic surgeries, celebrities, so many things, so much content to consume, right? There are some people who can become role models, and some role models, like it's not the role model's fault, but it can be unhealthy to set that standard on yourself. And like another thing that like that'll develop body dysmorphia because like you want to appear a certain way to pass, but you also want to be more than that to be desired because you feel the bar is so much higher and there's so much to overcome. I mean, like, there are just some basic things that trans people have to go through that, like, most people wouldn't really perceive as, like, anywhere near a problem, but, like, it can be detrimental. It can be, like, fucking, like, it can be a plague. Like, I have had to go through a long process myself over just acceptance. It's like, back during my teenage years, 16, 17, 18, pre-COVID, soon after being on the team with Dougie, I believe. Actually, no. Dougie's team was after COVID, so this was pre-Dougie. But I used to go to this esports lounge all the time. And anytime I went there, I would always wear jeans just to not have any leg hair show. Like, I don't want anyone to suspect my leg hair. And then on top of that, I would always wear a hoodie to hide my body frame. I would put my hair up into pigtails to appear feminine. I would part my hair in ways and grow out my hair long enough to pass as feminine. And I'd be like androgynous at the time, which was a massive victory for me. I wouldn't have people assuming I was a man, right? And to me, that was a very massive victory. But then that wasn't enough because, I mean, just like...
You also want to be desired.
Yeah, I also wanted to be desired. Exactly. I wanted more than that. And that's where, like, concepts like products, right? Like, I was really obsessed with the idea of taking hormones. And hormones is a whole another topic that we'll probably discuss a bit later. But, like, the idea of that hormones is, like, the gateway to an ideal trans life is very toxic in itself, I would feel. Like, obviously, that's part of your transition. It's part of your process. That's part of the metamorphosis. It's part of the journey. But being so young and people hooking you onto the idea of hormones, HRT, or I guess, like, a lot of what I'm explaining, I also feel is, like, male to female. I don't know what it's like to be female to male, but I can imagine it's very similar things, except the roles may be a bit, like, reversed. Like, instead of me wanting to appear very feminine and be desired in that way because of my femininity, maybe in the other way around, the feminine person would want to be appearing masculine. Maybe they'd want facial hair. Maybe they'd want muscles. Maybe they'd want, like, a sharp jawline, or maybe they'd want, like, a broad shoulder, like, you know, strong. I don't really know what to call that, but, like, big shoulders, a nice frame, I guess. Like,
You're gonna be broad, yeah.
Yeah. And this is all just encompassing the idea that, like, you can develop an idea of yourself that you are not enough. And it's very easy to fall into that, especially when you add on an extra part of social media, which is the hate. When you see people hating on transgender people, when you see, like, oh my God, this is something, like, we're discussing so much, and it's really making me come to the realization that, like, yeah, wow, the concept of, I guess, as you said, transgenderism is very not, like, it's very new, I would say, just because it wasn't like when COVID started, I would literally play League like 15 hours a day. Like, it was bad. Like, I would play League nonstop because COVID, right? We're all locked in our homes, and
Whatever
I would
hang smoke, yeah.
I would hang out with so many online groups, and I used to have a lot more feminine voice than I do right now. I used to be a lot more soft spoken. I used to have a higher pitch voice. And that's another thing that's part of my acceptance, where it's like I would actively, like, do my own vocal training and strain my vocal cords. Like, it would hurt. I mean, it wouldn't actively bring pain to my throat, but my like throat would get coarse, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it would like like I would definitely need to not speak for a certain period just to give it time to heal and relax, because like I'd strain it sometimes just trying to appear. That's part of the femininity. Like now that we're online, I don't have to worry about my physical appearance and how I'm upholding that to other people, but now I have to use my voice to and capture people and, you know, convince people that I am XYZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just convincing people, but it's also convincing myself that it is good enough and it's doing what I desire, right?
Yep.
And um, where I'm getting to this is that when you hang out with online groups and people are unaware that you're trans, I had a lot of experience with hiding my identity, just making people think I'm a cis woman, and then coming out as trans later just because I figured it would be best to just hide it away from them. And I just like hear so many transphobic comments pretty regularly among so many different groups. And it's just like, damn, like men really do just look down at like trans women like, whoa, that's sus. And it's like a joke that it's like, maybe if they can't pull any women, they might have to switch teams or whatever. And it's just like always looked down on as like a negative spotlight. And we're never looked at as equal. We're never looked at as in the same playing field. I hate to say same playing field, but it's just like we're just not equal. That is just how it is, right? We are
Well,
a minority in that sense, and that is like infectious. If your resolve is not good enough, or not, I don't want to say good enough, but if you're not confident enough in yourself and your being, that totally wagers into your like mental health.
I have a question.
Like,
I have a question.
go ahead.
I don't even know if you could answer this question, but do you think that's just kind of human? Like, I feel like most people go through the stage of lacking self confidence and then being confident there, even outside the trans community, where they're just like really unsure. And obviously, this, it's a little different when it's so targeted. But how much obviously there's some portion of it is the pressure of people being like that and thinking that way, but how much of it is just natural, like just natural, like just natural part of growing up and just not feeling confident and you know not just growing into that your shoes, I guess, growing into your identity.
Um, a lot of it is. This is just part of being human. But I feel like it gets also taken to a deeper degree when it comes to what it means to be a trans person. Because let's put it this way. Your average girl probably has to go through all of this all the time. Your average man probably has to go through all of this all the time. But like going through high school, you can get up in the morning, shower, put on your clothing, brush your teeth, brush your hair, get all nice and clean if you even go that far to getting ready in high school. Some people just wake
I
up,
just,
shower, throw on their
I
clothes,
just rolled
go
out
to
of bed,
school.
to be honest. I
Yeah.
think that was it.
So like you can do your best to like uphold a like appearance, right?
Hmm.
And it's like that is enough. Like people just will innately hang out with you due to the interactions of classrooms, right? And you'll naturally form bonds and naturally people will just be interested in you. It's just kind of just like the
I
way of
don't
how
know.
things go.
I don't think so. I think
And
people like that wasn't my experience. This is not the experience of a lot of people I know. Most people I know, they were kind of lonely in high school. They didn't really have that many friends, and they don't really talk to people from high school anymore. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I'm just lost in the whole, like, people are just fucking children are mean, bro. I was mean. Like, people are just flat out mean, and they'll look at you and go, "Hey, you're fat. Hey, you're trans. Hey, you're gay. Hey, you're a minority. Hey, you're white now, I guess." I don't know. Like, I just feel like people, it's such like a natural kind of thing that people are just awful.
yeah.
So
And that's also true to some degree. I think
mhm.
it's a very large number of things that can be at once. That it's not mutually exclusive. Again, like it's
Sure.
just like all of these things can be happening, and it's like, for example, when I went into high school, I first went to a high school named Coral Gables, right?
Hmm.
And very, very massive public school, and I originally moved into there with my middle school, like private school friends, and it's like they hit it off. They made a ton of friends. They're doing great, and I felt myself lacking because it's like playing video games at the time was looked at as like a nerdy thing. Like you're
Oh
just
yeah.
like a fucking nerd, and nerds are like looked down on. And obviously, nerds have their cliques too. Like there's people who like computer games, right? But like I didn't have any friends that played League, right? And that was like my main thing. And then on top of that, like at the time, entering ninth grade, I was the gay kid, right? Like I was a gay male. It didn't take me until 10th grade where I was like, okay, I definitely just don't feel comfortable being addressed as like a man. Like that's just not something that aligns with me. Like I already like grew past the stage that I'm clearly not interested in women. I'm definitely clearly interested in men, but being referred to as a man and being referred to by my like dead name is just like it wasn't cutting it for me.
Yeah, Rose, I actually have a question here. I'm actually wondering, like, how did it how did it make you feel? Like, how did you, I guess, I mean, obviously you knew, like you said, from like ninth to 10th grade, you kind of figured out like, oh, like I just knew that being referred to as a man wasn't quite right or didn't fit you. I guess, like, can you try to describe that feeling?
I'm gonna rewind all the way to like sixth, seventh grade. Like
Sure.
um throughout middle school, I can say like pretty comfortably a lot of people throughout middle school probably had like at least a friend group, right? Or at least a best friend, right? And it would be common to either go to each other's houses, meet up at a playground, play video games at each other's houses, maybe play card games at school, just talk at school, talk about sensational videos, PewDiePie, whatever was trending for you at the time, maybe books if that was your thing. Like there's always something to talk about and those people to talk to in middle school, right? And naturally with that is if like you ever went to birthday parties, right? I mean, obviously not everyone has this, so this can be a bit insensitive to just like say that everyone experienced this, but like I'd say a good comfortable majority of people experience this. And in my case, I experienced that. And um, when I would go to birthday parties or whenever like my parents would drop me off at a friend's house, like I had a best friend at this time named Lucy, right? She was my bestie. Like we were close. We knew each other since first grade. And entering like sixth, seventh grade, like nonstop, my stepbrothers, my family, they'll be like, when are you gonna ask her out? Are you gonna date her? Is that your girlfriend? Yada yada yada. Like it's like the typical tease that families do when a male, like when a boy hangs out with a girl, right? They always tease that. Like the grandma's like, oh, you're a womanizer, whatever. They like, you're a player,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yep. Yep.
And it's like I was definitely always bothered by that. Like I was uncomfortable. Like I didn't want to ask her out. And then that pressure from both our families saying that eventually like kind of came to her to ask me out. And it's like, okay, well, I just got asked out for the first time. I guess I say yes. And it's like thinking it over for a full day bothered me so bad I was like crying at home, unironically. I genuinely was so bothered by this because like I agreed to something that I was clearly not okay with, and what made me cry and bothered me so bad is that I wanted to end it like right off the bat. It hadn't even been a day. Like I went back home and I wanted to end it. It's like I don't want that like label, that responsibility. Like I don't want what comes with this title. Like I don't want to have to hold her hand and just be more than friends. Like I'm very happy with us getting home every day and gaming on computers, playing Roblox, playing Minecraft, playing Wizard 101. Like we had our friendship, we had our thing, and it was perfect. Why did it have to go beyond that just because of what others thought, right? Like that there was just something very innately wrong with it with me. So I had to break it to her the other day or the following day, and that made her cry, and that made me cry. I didn't want to see her cry. I didn't want to hurt her, and it's just like these are experiences that were very negative for me. Like this was a natural pull away from that social norm. Like I just clearly didn't align with that, and I had a very like natural like attraction towards like femininity. Like I loved cheerleading. I loved like Dora. I love the princesses. I love the Disney princesses a ton. Like I loved these things. These are things that like just naturally like I liked. Like I didn't like WWE like back then. Like you had like these like action figures, and it was like, and these are like these are, this is like rebounding to like gender roles and how it plays into society. Like there's these things. There's like boy toys, boy things, video games. It's like I actually aligned with video games. I liked video games a lot, but like I mean back then, like I also feel like that's like why there's probably like more men in the gaming industry. I know like Valorant has like a 50-50 ratio. But like
which
I
I
feel
think
like
is crazy. Subtopic that's 50-50. That is insane.
Valorant is nuts for sure. The community.
and it's like despite what was naturally like imposed onto me through like societal norms, it's like there are just things I didn't like, and there are just things I liked. Hell, even very tiny things like in Pokemon, I would always choose the female trainer because I felt like that's what I preferred. I mean, there's obviously men or boys at the time who chose the female trainer because they liked playing as a girl and looking at the girl. But it's like in my case, I wanted to be the girl, right? And it trickled down the vine. I played Wizard 101. You could customize your character. I chose the female. I played RuneScape at some point. I chose the female. Like I always chose the woman because that just kind of what I liked. And then when you got to actually customize the character, I had so much fun with that. Like I liked that.
So
It wasn't
for you,
until
it was very innate. That's what it sounds like. It was
yeah.
very, very innate.
But at first, it was just like, I'm a gay man. I didn't know the concept of what it meant to be trans.
Mm.
Like, seventh, eighth, ninth, I was just a gay boy. But then, entering 10th grade, I learned the concept of what it was to be trans. And I learned it through this girl named Samantha Lux. She has a YouTube channel. She's where I learned about a lot about the trans life. And honestly, like a lot of good came from it because I got educated a ton, and a lot of bad came to it because seeing her journey as a 16-year-old, just transitioning, going through all these surgeries, going through hormones, going through all these things, and looking gorgeous as fuck, I was like, wow, I am never gonna be that. And that hurt, like crippled my mental so badly going through my high school years. And I did go through my depressive like phase. I did go through my suicidal ideation phase. Like I wasn't like ever going to reach the point of wanting to commit suicide. I'm sorry for bringing it up. Suicide warning, I guess. I don't know, but it's just
It's
like,
fine. Spotify is. I love Spotify. It's the only place we can talk about it, and it's not a huge deal. So.
but yeah, it's like I did go through that phase, and I think um, wrapping this up together, like I do think it can be environmental. It can be what other people think. Hell, like I remember this one time in like eighth grade, we were picking up my stepbrothers from a basketball game. They're very involved in like basketball. They're tournaments all the time. And there was like news about this basketball player at the time, like 2014, who actually quit after making bank and came out as transgender and used all that money to get surgery and transition. And my family would talk mad shit about that basketball player in the car. And it was just like, damn. At the time, I didn't know I was trans, but like back when I was talking about like, I feel bad for the people that just innately feel like the introduction and education that is kind of almost even forced onto them just through like the progression of society. Like there are definitely people that feel antagonized by the presence of people transitioning or the presence of transgender people or the presence of pronouns and gender spectrum or even sexuality, right? So it's like there's definitely some people like it was totally normal to talk shit about trans people, gay people, or even like, oh my god, something that would like bother me down to my core growing up as a gay kid was like I was definitely influenced by other gay content creators. There's like Tyler Oakley, there's Joey Graceffa, there's like all these at the time gay content creators, and they're very flamboyant. Like the stereotypical like limp wrist, like flamboyant fingers, whatever you want to call them. The vocal fry that oh my god, like that type of mannerisms I guess, that would be stereotypical to gay men, I would even partake in them because that just came naturally to me, and people would mock you for it. Like I would go to a summer camp and I would just like unprovoked on my own being, if I'm just having a conversation, I'll have people just start imitating me. And it's just for the sake of getting angry, like getting me angry. Like just like they want to bother me. They find that like funny to them. My being to them is funny. And sometimes you can make jokes and jabs, but there's very clearly malintent there. They're not like, and at the same time, they're kids. They don't know better. But at the same time, I'm a kid too, and they're kind of just coming at me. And it's like, these are all things that like, there's so many like experiences that build up, and a very vast majority of them is negative. And you brought up that it's natural. That's like part of human life. I mean, there's lots of humiliation that people have to go through, whether you're too skinny, whether you're fat, whether you don't have muscle, whether you have acne, whether your face is greasy, whether your hair is gross, whether your hair is too long, whatever it is, there's always some sort of imperfection that gets picked at. But the whole point that it comes to with trans people is that it is that your very being, in no matter what state it'll be, is never good enough. And I can feel like most people could probably relate to that, whether they're trans or not. But the bar is set so high that it is fucking rough. Like, and even like, I hate to put looks on a scale, but let's say your average 3 out of 10, 5 out of 10 guy or girl, right, can get by with getting a relationship just because the like the natural attraction between people and just like personalities and common interests, and it's just like you guys genuinely enjoy each other's company, it'll just naturally happen through enough like bonding time or connections. But like with a trans person, you can get along with a guy or girl. In most cases it's going to be a guy with male to female, I suppose, because like I feel like that's the trend in the younger years. It's like you're interested in men. That's kind of like the general bar that's met, and that's my case here. I'm not interested in women. I'm interested in men, and it's like you can get along with a guy really damn well, but they will never overcome the fact that you were born with a penis, and that is just it. That will draw the line. Hell, sometimes you won't even be allowed to stand in the same field. Like that, like you could have just like gone to the gym. You could have gotten a nice ass. You could have like gotten a nice body. You could have grown out your hair and conditioned it real nice. You could have started like doing just basic facial care with a cleanser and a moisturizer, and your skin could be nice and clear, and you could have all these nice features. But guess what? You're born with the penis. You have a dead name that they know you by because it's what you're documented as. So when you go to school and you do a roll call, you get that awkward moment where you get called your birth name, and it's like, oh, the person that is appearing as a woman suddenly is now being referred to by a masculine name, and then now they're about to speak out in a feminine voice, and it's gonna be awkward to do the attendance, and it's just like, oop, that's weird. That's definitely like unneeded attention that'll probably get a couple giggles all the time. Like high school was a nightmare. Like genuinely, like it was just a bad experience, and it's like that is just the trans experience. The best thing that could happen for a trans person is just people to never find out, unironically. That is such a probably bad take to ever say, and I don't want people to ever feel that way, but that is probably the reality. Like people never finding out is probably the best thing. Just getting to silently sail and isolate yourself and never have it involve in society is probably the best thing, because it always just gets met with backlash. There's some people who are really lucky. Some people have really defensive friend groups, and they fight for you. They stand there with you. I unfortunately did not have that. But, you know, the online world was like a very big thing for me. Like League of Legends and the friends I met online were a very big part of my my overcoming myself. So it's like I definitely think there's like environmental factors. We went over many environmental factors to this with like family interactions in public, high school, middle school. Like we went over many environmental factors. There's also like the mental factors, right? That's like part of being trans is that you'll never be okay with with your own body, your own image, how big your boobs are, how fat your ass is. Are your thighs big enough? Is your like skin physically like supple or smooth enough to like portray a woman? Maybe too much body hair. Maybe you can't make your facial hair go away. No matter how much you shave it, there's just stubble, right? All of these things are like factors that no matter how hard you work towards, like some of it's environmental and some of it is just like you have the idea that you'll never be good enough because the bar is so damn high. You know, it's rough. Like it really is. Like I think the suicide rate is like a combination of so many factors, and it doesn't even help. Like we didn't even go over some of the topics, which is like I brought up earlier. There's people who say transgender people are like fucking child molesters. They're pedophiles. Or there's even like the whole argument where like, oh, this one was a bad one in high school, but like as a transgender person, doesn't matter what fucking bathroom you pick, woman's bathroom or men's bathroom, you are coin flipping. The best outcome is like the bathroom you enter is just empty in the moment. You walk into a men's bathroom, you're getting looks, you're getting comments. People think you're fucking weird. You walk into a women's bathroom, most of the time they're supportive and that's great. But sometimes it's just a living nightmare too. Some people are just genuinely uncomfortable with a biological man being in there. And some women view it as an invasion of private space. Like a women's bathroom is meant for biological women. And it's like, that's another thing. It's like, I think now that I'm like going over this long ass tangent and I took the spotlight, I think I'm ultimately coming to the idea that it's like there's no sense of belonging. And the true sense of belonging comes from being okay with yourself. You have to be comfortable being alone. And you have to be comfortable with the reality of the world. And that's a very dark truth that is sadly like that's not the message I ever want to convey, but it's like for me to reach the point where I have right now where I'm like unfazed is like you just literally have to not care. You have to be comfortable with the fact that like America is the country that it is. I guess America is a continent, but you know, the USA is the country that it is, and you can literally do anything in this country. And
Hell yeah,
with
brother.
time, with time, you will get your degree, you will get your own money, you will get your own job. Hopefully, if you get to that, and not everyone has that opportunity, but like, there's really so much you can do, and eventually, you'll be on your own, and you'll have the rest of the 3/3 of your life to you if you live a long and happy life. That's another thing we're probably gonna have to discuss too. It's like the medical treatments for trans people also lowers their lifespan and can also
I
have a lot of
didn't know
health
that.
risks.
I did not know that. I know there's been a lot of health risk, and there's been a huge amount of stuff that has come out recently about the hormone therapy and the surgeries. Like, there was shit I had no idea about, and I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago. I mean, the stuff just came out where it turned out the companies who were pushing these drugs and these surgeries were covering up all these side effects. Same with abortion too. It was like all this stuff is coming to light now, um, and and hormone birth control. There's all of this information that's coming out now that like these things have really terrible side effects, like some insane stuff that you just would not believe. And this is against big pharma, guys. I swear this is against big pharma, but they just cover it up, and the whole thing is, they want you to buy their drugs. That's what they want, so they're gonna push it down, and they're gonna play up like, hey, you need this to be comfortable, like, come and get it from us. It's. Um, but yeah, no, I would love to talk about the hormone stuff in the surgeries or in the surgery because it's a topic that is recently becoming really controversial because of the information that's coming to light, and it's bad. They covered up a lot of stuff. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah. So I guess like the most obvious place to start is at what age. This is obviously a contentious one, but at what age do they have to start hormone therapy?
That is controversial, but I do have very strong opinions on it.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear your opinion.
So I brought up earlier in my long ass tangent that, like, growing up as a trans person, and for example, like with the Samantha Lux person, none of this is in hate to Samantha Lux. She's a goddess, but it's like when you see content like that going out, and the average trans person probably just can only desire that HRT is like the fix it all to just your journey to being what you truly want to be, or truly can be, rather. Um, that is very infectious, like I brought up earlier, and how that is like, I don't actually believe you should be taking hormones until like you've hit like 24. I think like there are like studies bringing up that your brain doesn't fully develop until 21, and then there's more studies that
Oh,
it's
it
like
got
actually
pushed up
it
again to
continues.
30
Yeah,
something.
exactly. It's like I think it's bad for trans identifying individuals to be viewing hormones as the gateway to being what they identify as and like aspiring to be. Like, I think you can accomplish a lot naturally. And I hate to be the person that says that, but I think it's very true. It's like growing out your hair, grooming yourself, going to like a hair salon and like styling it up, using basic facial care products to like have healthy skin. Like these are all things that help feminize you, but it's like something that everyone should have, whether you're a man, whether you're masculine, whether you're feminine, whether you're a woman, whatever you are. Like these are like basic self-care that also goes like a very long way. And then obviously like waxing your legs or shaving your legs, using nair, whatever method, like whatever helps you encompass this femininity on top of like clothing choice, hairstyles, like these are all things that help you encompass it, and you don't need hormones to do it. Sure, hormones can make your boobs bigger. Maybe it can adjust the fat amongst your body to like appear more feminine. No one's gonna fucking notice that shit. I mean, obviously, like, if your tits are bigger, like that's gonna be noticed, but like you shouldn't be worrying about that as a fucking teenager. I'm sorry. Like, I know it's so like it's so messy because like I could be like totally coming off as bigoted and like ignorant here because like there's technically like the argument of body dysmorphia, but I think it ultimately stems from the idea that there's like they're not being given the role models that are required. They're not viewing the content that they're supposed to be viewing at their time of age while they're growing and maturing and their brain is still developing. Like, and this is also important because like hormones do heavily impact your like cognitive ability. It doesn't make you like dumber or smarter or anything, but it like makes you more susceptible to mood swings, and it makes you more susceptible to like hormone imbalances. Like it's not always going to be perfect at first, and like it's kind of like a tricky topic about like the chemicals in your brain, right? When you take estrogen, like it could adjust it and it could cause some problems in the long run, but from my understanding there's a lot of health issues behind it,
Hmm.
and I don't think a child should be doing it, and I don't think just because you hit 18 and that means you're an adult now means you should be able to take it either. Like I think there's an appropriate time and place, and I've been very tempted to get it. Like now that I have money, I've been like, damn, I could totally just start my treatments, and it's like I don't think I should. There's definitely like a lot more steps I should be taking in my journey before I reach the point that I'm like, okay, do I need to rely on the HRT to be who I am? Now, surgeries is a whole nother thing, but surgeries is like, for the lack of a better word, I don't want to sound like degenerate, but like that's like late game. That's like you got money, you are where you want to be in life, and you have the money set aside to actually make the alterations that would make you be comfortable with yourself. Like a lot of people say that like like gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia is like hand in hand with being trans, but I don't think it's like innate to being trans. I just think it's like a byproduct of what it's like to exist in the trans life in society. And it's like it just doesn't happen by just existing. It's like kind of just a product of, I mean, I'm not an expert, I can't just say this, but from my understanding living through it is like, it's like when you get obsessed with like the male gaze and like trying to appeal to others perceived like ideals, I guess, like what is inappropriate, like
Yeah. Body dysmorphia is not specific to anyone that is trans. It's a general disorder.
yeah.
It's defined as a mental condition in which you can't stop thinking about one or more perceived defects or flaws in your appearance. A flaw that appears minor or can't be seen by others, but you may feel so embarrassed, ashamed, or anxious that you may avoid social situations.
Yeah.
So I would argue that like women who feel like they're not skinny enough, or men that feel like they aren't buff enough, or if
Yeah.
you have like really bad acne, or if it's like, oh, I have this birthmark on the side of my face and everybody must see it, or like, oh, I have, whatever it may be. I think it's a more general thing. But
Yeah.
you're right. I think there is I think that phrase gets I don't know whether it's like I don't want to say earned. I don't know if it's necessarily correct, but I do agree with you that that term does get thrown around more, like in regards to the trans community. Maybe it's because there's a perception that like, oh, um, body dysmorphia is what kind of like causes someone to want to be trans, right? Like it's like, oh, like I'm not happy that I, don't have male or female part that I would rather have than what I was born with, or some other some other thing relating to it. I don't know, but I don't. I feel like that term also gets thrown out a lot without people really understanding what it means.
Mhm.
So, but that that happens a lot on the internet. So,
Yeah.
take that for what it is.
it I it kind of comes back to another problem that I've seen, and this is above just trans stuff, but self-diagnosing in general. And
Mhm.
it seemed like it kind of started with, I'm sure it's been around forever, but it seemed like it really picked up when it came to mental illness, when that kind of became, there was a push to accepting people with, these more severe mental illnesses like PTSD, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, blah 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 blah.
Honestly,
And
I think it came with social media and the freaking internet.
Yeah.
yeah, you're probably
Oh,
right.
I
You're
googled.
probably
I
right.
googled that I had a headache today. Google told me that I'm gonna die in like 24 hours. I'm a doctor.
Yeah, yeah. So
Like,
it's just become such a problem, and uh, unfortunately, I think it also has infected the trans community a bit, where you have some of these people who are maybe suffering from uh, body dysmorphia, and then they're self-diagnosing it, you know, as, oh, I'm trans. And I think that just self-diagnosing in general is not it's not very productive for yourself, but you're also doing damage to, the people who actually suffer from these things. There are people who literally cannot go outside because it'll make them freak the fuck out, and they'll have insane physical symptoms. And um just in terms of the trans community, it's the same thing, where these two things are not the same. They're very clearly different. Like, you explained it really well. The difference in the two, with your own experiences. They're not the same thing. They're very different. Uh,
Mhm.
so just from both sides, the people who self-diagnose, and then the outside of, oh well, you're probably just suffering from this. um, uh, I just wanted to bring that up. Sorry, it is a pet peeve.
No, you both are absolutely right. Yeah.
all right. Are there any other topics that we haven't covered that you want to cover, either of you? I mean, we could talk about this for like it feels like 20 episodes, really. And there's only going to be more information as it gets put out. So I have a feeling we will revisit this topic one day.
For sure.
But is there anything else you all want to talk about today?
Let's see.
I would love to throw in there's a hearing today where the Senate discussed in general the government's role in monitoring social media, specifically speech. And this has become a topic because it's they're trying to decide whether or not misgendering somebody should be considered hate speech. And that's important because obviously on social media you can't, and most of the platforms you can't have hate speech. Uh, so I don't know. That's a big thing that's going on. I think we've seen you have the UK and you have Canada who have already kind of went through this phase. And if you're a conservative, you probably don't like the way that looks. Most of them, the UK will literally arrest you over tweets. It's like over 20,000 people a year get arrested for um, tweets that are not. I'm not talking about like terrorist threats or anything, but like just like a hate speech or they said a bad word type thing. And Canada actually passed a bill. I think it was this year. No, for sure it was this year. I don't know if it was last month or the month before, but they also passed a bill where they themselves can start pretty much controlling the speech on social media. And the U.S. is debating this very same thing. So, yeah, I think all of our opinions sound like they're going to align, but I still wanted to kind of ask you guys what you thought about that.
Road, you can go first.
I was gonna say Ryan could go first.
Oh, you're so kind. So, all right, which, dude, there's so much that you brought up that I'm
I
gonna
know,
try.
sorry.
No, you're fucking not. No,
No,
you're
I'm not. No,
absolutely
I'm not. Absolutely not.
God, don't even try to bullshit me, you fucking guy. All right, so let's. Uh, hmm. All right, let's talk about like government's role in monitoring hate speech, especially when it comes to like online platforms. Uh, I think it's a dangerous precedent to set when it's like when you set too stringent of rules. I think you risk making things abusable, let's say, right? Like, you know, I think one of the, let's say the victims, I don't want to necessarily say victim, but like one of the casualties of like the whole like politically correct movement has been like comedy, right? Like people criticize comedians for using terms that like some people may find humorous, even if they are, within a reasonable context. Like let's say it's like a recording that's taken out or whatever, right? Where there's no necessarily ill intent behind like a certain word or phrase being used, but like people go, oh well, you know that's that's hate speech or that's hurtful, whereas someone else would be like, well, I thought that was funny. People are going to have different interpretations of like everything, just because words require like actual definitions and the context and like the way they said it can even impact how you take it. So I think like trying to monitor like words being used as hateful or not like is like a nigh impossible task to begin with, and I don't necessarily trust the government to get it right.
True.
I
Not
just,
wrong.
I do not. I think the more complicated things get, the government just starts really getting fucky with it. Like
Yes.
it's impossible, right? Like if I want to say, oh, searching the word bomb is bad and that should be um, not allowed. What if it's like, oh, bomb in Minecraft, how to make a bomb in Minecraft, right? Like
Yeah.
that's way different. Um, so I'll at least start there. Rose, what do you think?
I think when you create, um, I guess, do we just say new rules? When you create new restrictions, when you create these new differences, I guess, like it, it sounds simple on paper. Oh, just regulating, like what exactly people are allowed to say, but it gets more complex because it has like a lot of implications. Like where does the line get drawn? What regulates it specifically? Because it's like technically the government is regulating it, but who is it actually? Is it like the people running the social media platform? Is it government officials getting hired jobs to do this? It's like actual human people scrolling through and taking control of it. Is it a fucking AI? It's like there's a lot of nuance, and what it implies is pretty vague, right? Like it sounds specific on paper, but it is very vague and it's dangerous. I think ultimately freedom of speech includes hate speech. That should not be violated. I understand social media is kind of like an evolving thing in terms of society. Like it really spiked in like 2012, 2014, and it's just taken off, and it's like become powerful. It's like a way to it's a way to like reach out into entire crowds. It's a way to represent. It's a way to advertise. It's a way to do an infinite number of things, really. And it, it ultimately, I don't think hate speech should be like restricted. I think that like denying the people one of their rights, it's like I almost feel like that'll somehow trickle down into like real world scenarios. Like once you create the restriction on social media, like I almost feel like you kind of create wiggle room for the government to find other like you said, like other ways to abuse it or mess around with it. Like that's just dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to do, and I would argue it's unconstitutional. Like that's not right.
Damn straight. Yeah, I am glad none of us trust our government to handle the operation. Um, very last thing that I wanted to talk about. It was kind of something that hit me last minute before we started, but we had talked about this before on a previous episode where what I think most likely will happen is AI will play a pivotal role here, where it will naturally filter out things you don't want to see, and instead of the control being, in someone else's hands, it'll be in yours because obviously it can change the way the writing is viewed and change the language so that it's more fitting to it. Whether you think that's good or bad, you know, it is what it is. But uh, I think AI will be so useful here in particular because it does kind of have the ability to bridge the missing language gap between people, and not just in terms of the way people use words, but like the natural kind of communication gap when it comes to expressing your opinion, or idea or even feeling. And I think it will be really important and helpful for just everybody in general. But yeah, yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on the hearings and see what lands because man, that's no bueno. IMO.
I have no input on AI. I feel like I'm very uneducated on the entire concept of AI. The other day, I tried to get input, and apparently I was like severely wrong on it. So
Oh,
I, I don't know.
It's fine.
I
Dougie's
have
wrong on it all the time too.
that's so untrue. I'm like a fortune teller. I don't want to hear it.
Okay, and I'm not. Hello.
You're fine. You are too. We talk about AI in here a lot. It probably comes up almost every episode. So, uh, yeah. But
yeah, I know nothing of it.
sure. Is there any other topics, or are you guys good?
I mean, I
Okay.
think we've covered so much, but Rose, if there's anything else you want to say or cover, by all means.
Um, there's maybe like one or two things we haven't covered in the list, but I don't think they're particularly like um urgent to go over. I feel like it'll sound like I'm an echo chamber or like a broken record because a lot of it is gonna be like I feel like a lot of it is gonna be points I've already made. It's like
Well, I mean, if that's the case, I mean, no reason to revisit it. But maybe we'll be able to do another talk like this sometime in the future where things have changed and we can kind of give it a fresh look over, see what has changed for the better, changed for the worse, whatever.
Yeah, I just gotta consume studies and see their validity.
And stop playing League. Step number
Uh,
one.
I think I might be criminally addicted. I'm sorry.
It's
Cannot
fine as
pry
long as
me
you're
off
better
of
than
this.
Dougie. As long as you're better than Dougie, it's fine. I mean, it's not a hard bar to reach. So
Says you, someone who's never surpassed me.
I am higher rated than you in League right now, Dougie.
You want to bet?
Yes. You haven't played a single game all season. I want to hear about it.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences and your opinions. Um,
Yes, Rose, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was really fun. I had a
Good.
good time.